It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers with you, here to help you with your inspiration to get your aspirations out into the world. And this week is the week of the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. I'm going to be talking about that, what it means, how it relates to history and the last time that the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction was in Taurus, and a little bit about what you can do to use and leverage this energy in your personal life. Because remember, just because the outside world looks like it's going nuts doesn't mean you can't integrate energy to align into your most authentic version of self. And that is really what this Aries season has been all about. We're winding up Aries season. Speaking of, as we move towards Taurus on the 19th, it's going to be an interesting time, and we're going to be dealing with life in different ways than we've dealt with before, especially if you're paying attention. It's going to be easy to be a little bit overstimulated on the energy levels, and we want to not necessarily anchor ourselves, but rather ground by holding our consciousness. And I'll be working on some stuff for that for patrons. Speaking of patrons, patrons sponsor this podcast at patreon.com/the Awake Space. And I always do patron shout outs every single episode. This one shall be no different. They also sponsor from the $15 level and up the Awake Space Astrology magazine, which has articles, scarily accurate horoscopes, an astrology planner, and your what to expect in the headlines every week. I'll be reading from that here in just a second. I do that at the top of the podcast. And then we'll talk about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, kind of putting things into context as we look at what's going on in the world here. And we'll see what other mayhem I get up to and talk about in this episode. So grab your coffee, grab your tea, get your chai, have your matcha, drink your water, whether we're driving to work together, folding laundry, doing our hot girl walk, we're moving forward and having kind of a historic week. All right. So, alrighty. The thing about a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction is it happens every 14 years. It does not happen in the same sign every time. The last time we had Jupiter-Uranus conjunct in Taurus was May 7th, 1941. Now, if you're an American, you might think like a commenter did on my TikTok, oh, well, at least it wasn't December 7th, which was Pearl Harbor. But World War II was well established and going on throughout the world. It was pretty much the United States just was not joining, okay? And Pearl Harbor kind of forced that issue. So it forced America to kind of get involved. It had held kind of an isolationist position up to that point. So, and it's relevant to today, okay? It's relevant to today. But in May of 1941, it was a very, very active time during World War II. You had the Blitzkrieg going on, where both, like before May 7th, the whole week before, you had the Blitz of Liverpool, okay, Liverpool, England, where the Beatles came from. It was a shipping center where they built ships that the Germans were bombing the snot out of it. You had a Blitzkrieg go on in Scotland, in London, and Hull, the city of Hull. It was most famous because that was the May 7th date. There were battles in the Middle East, in Iraq and in Palestine. And there were battles going on in North Africa, Italy, and then, of course, the Battle of Shanxi, which was in China. The whole world was fighting. And we're seeing that reflected today in today's world when we're looking at, Russia, Ukraine, instabilities in different former Soviet republics, looking at what's going on in the Middle East right now. And once again, it looks like there is an attempt to draw America into the fight. It's a little different. Technology has changed. How we do warfare is changed. Unless you're, in a minority population that people are wanting to cleanse ethnically. I'll talk more about that in the patron-only podcast. I save all of that stuff for there, just because I think we have to be careful and judicious in how we speak these days, just for our own safety. So as we move forward with this week, it's going to be historic. It's not a singular day. And the day I'm looking at this week, as we're on this flip side of 1940, 1941, because Pluto, on May 7th, 1941, Pluto was at 2 degrees Leo. And we have Pluto at 2 degrees of Aquarius. And it's not making aspect to the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, but neither was Pluto back in 1941. And so it's very fascinating to see these markers when we look at the May 7th chart. So you can make a chart from May 7th of 1941. You can do it for wherever you live. Just put in a noon time and just take a look at those outer planets. And you'll just see some interesting correlations if you understand mundane astrology. If you don't understand astrology, don't make a chart. Okay, it's something that takes time to learn. Okay, but if you understand it, or you're starting to learn it, take a look at that chart because you'll find it really, really fascinating. So speaking of all things on the opposite side of World War II, in an intermediate class yesterday, we looked at Winston Churchill's chart. I had that chart up for them to talk about all week. They didn't know who it was. I had them delineate the chart without knowing who the person was and have a discussion around it. And then we talked about it for about an hour in class, and then we watched one of his famous speeches, and I had them discuss the astrology they heard. It was a great exercise. We had a lot of fun. As we wind up intermediate astrology, we only have a few weeks left. And so this is where we get to the fun part of doing astrology and discussing astrology. It was a great class. And if you have wanted to take intermediate astrology, it just hasn't fit into your schedule. I've got one more happening this month or starting next month. And I won't teach it again this year. So I won't teach intermediate astrology again until 2025. So if you've been wanting to get in with me and get some stellar intermediate level natal astrology education, join me there. Cosmic Surfers is where we're going to do more advanced astrology. Okay, so that's a Patreon tier. If you want more advanced instruction on a monthly basis, then join me there. And I'll offer mini workshops throughout the year. I've got a beginning astrology class coming up starting in May, and that is just beginning. If astrology confuses you and you're not sure, what you want to do, that's fine. So, that's what we've got going up on deck this month. So beginning astrology is the foundational approach to learning the ABCs of astrology. It's 6 hours. It'll be 3 2-hour sessions. You get learning materials, flashcards, etc., that help you really get a solid foundation. Remember, astrology is like a language, and you don't start reading, Voltaire in French when you're learning French. You learn your ABCs and your nursery rhymes and learn to sing songs to build the skills to be able to be fluent in that language. So beginning astrology starts in early May. Let's see. Before I get to the next part, because I'm going to do the week ahead and what you can expect. Beginning in May, we're going to do, I'm doing something with Matilda. we're doing a May-June predictions event. It'll be on Zoom. We're doing 2 different dates. We're doing May 4th and May 5th, and we're doing the same event, but we're hitting all the time zones. We both have a global audience. She's in Australia. I will be back in America for those. And we're hitting both, the Western Hemisphere, basically North and South America. And then we're doing one that Europe can come into, and Asia, et cetera, Eastern Hemisphere. So we've got Western Hemisphere, Eastern Hemisphere events. We're going to be talking about current events and what to expect. Matilda and I have this really cool way of working together. I set up a chart and I talked about dates. She comes in with, it'll be like this. I then point out the astrology. It's like metaphysical tag teaming. And it's very entertaining because she and I we're funny. So we crack ourselves up. And I think that's what matters most. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to our podcast, The Sassy Seers, then go check that out, because we both see and are sassy. And that's more of a light comedic romp. We talk about metaphysical things, of course. But think about 2 middle-aged women after work, hanging out, defragging after a long day. It just happens that I'm an astrologer and she's a medium, and we talk about things that are up on deck in our lives and in the world. But for May 4th and 5th, we have a really great online event for you where we're going to get you really prepped, because after the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, kind of all bets are off. The seatbelts may not hold. You may need a harness. We're going to be flying forward, even as the retrogrades come in to play. And I know people get scared of retrogrades, but honestly, we're lucky Mercury's retrograde right now. It's put a little bit of the brakes on for that energy that's going on right now that is very volatile. It's very wild. If everything was direct right now, it would be more than we'd want. It'd be more than we'd want. So I like retrogrades because they tend to slow things down and give us a chance to prepare for when the planets do go direct. So I'll be talking about Pluto retrograde next week because Pluto stations retrograde on the 1st. And I don't get to talk about all the astrology stuff I want to talk about because I'm always repairing all the crappy stuff I see online. People scaring other people or just giving misinformation or repeating things that aren't true. All of that's a little frustrating. So there we go. Oh, she's in a mood. All right. So let's go back to the flip side of World War II and what I mean by that. The flip side is an old person term for when we had records, vinyls, and you had the A side and the B side. Okay. So it's kind of the opposite. We're in opposite world. I do not think we're going to see a repeat. I think that's the biggest mistake people make when reviewing history is they're like, oh no, it's going to be exactly the same. It's not exactly the same, but we are seeing the same themes. So we saw in the 30s the rise of authoritarianism. We saw that in the aughts. We saw authoritarianism has been rising since after 9/11 globally. Okay, just period. I'm sad that people are just noticing now, because I spent a lot of time going, oh, whoa, Nelly, this is maybe not a good idea for the last 20 some years. And here we are. We didn't resolve the causes of the conflicts worldwide. It was in World War II, it was a fight for supremacy on the global stage. They acted like there was a win between with the United States and the Soviet Union then holding the balance as superpowers. But since really the 90s or late 80s, when Germany reunified and the Soviet Union declined and then fell, it really left a power imbalance. And what we're seeing today as a result of that which is the result of not having solved the problems that had been created by empire building. And so we're going to see more conflict happening in the world over the week, but it's not anything close to what was going on in World War II. Okay. And I'm not diminishing what's happening to the people of Gaza. I'm not. That's the most reflective of what was going on in World War II, that people committed atrocities and crimes against humanity pretty much with impunity. And they did. I mean, that went on for a long time to many different ethnic groups and many different groups of people throughout Europe at the time. And we haven't changed that as we've looked at white supremacy, having kind of reached a zenith over the last few years, where people feel like they can, be jerks to other human beings. We've definitely seen the disparity in compassion towards victims of war who happen to be white and victims of war who happen to be brown. We've been seeing that. So we're seeing the disparity. So when we look at what's going on in the world this week, it's going to be very volatile. And beyond what happens on the 21st, the thing that has me the most nervous is the 17th. The 17th is going to be a really volatile day, guys. I am a little nervous because the moon's going to be in Leo and it's going to be opposing Pluto to start. But then that'll be like on the 15th. So between the 15th and the 17th, things, and you're listening to this on the 15th, things are going to be intensifying. I don't think they're going to be as intense on the 15th as they are on the 17th. You're going to see a lot of talk about trade agreements, trade organizations like the G7, European Union, other trade agreements. There might be an Asia-Pacific agreement with some other country. We're going to hear more about the Israel-Iran thing. And to me, it's really interesting where it really is reflective of what we've seen in like schools where, if a bully keeps going at you and you finally hit them and you've had enough, you get in as much trouble as them. And I'm not a fan of either party. Let's put it that way. I'm not an apologist for either country. It's just we're seeing where the rules aren't equal. And that makes sense. We've got the nodes. The North Node is in Aries. The South Node is in Libra. We're going to see where things are out of balance. So here's what I think is going to happen. And this is from the magazine, the Awake Space Astrology magazine, where you can get uncannily accurate horoscopes, the astrology planner, articles on current events, as well as the astrology school. And you'll see things written by the astrologers at Woke Astrology as well. So what do I see in the headlines? I see big storms with wind, hail, tornadoes, lightning strikes. This could be global. This is big. And what's very interesting, because I haven't been paying attention to a whole lot, as I sit here in Bahrain, we've got a big storm rolling in. And today it's the 14th, but still, or it's actually the 15th where I'm at. And the moon isn't even in Leo just yet, so it's still in Cancer. So it's interesting to watch this massive front roll in. There could be power outages, transformers blow, grid failures, so watch your electrical issues. There could be a celebrity legal case or a person of note has a scandal. That'll keep looking at that. It'll be a new one. This isn't going to be an existing scandal. This will be another one. King Charles will be in the headlines. Data breach and or payment gateway disruptions. You can see credit card payment systems and ATMs up on deck. We could see big transportation issues or an accident involving trucking or rail. Supply chain breaks in multiple industries. Now, this could be due to transportation issues. This may not be due to manufacturing or goods. This could actually just be like, remember when the Suez Canal was blocked, that kind of thing. We could see a breakdown in transportation. But it could be like a big issue at a manufacturing plant. Big explosion. We could see big explosions over the next couple of days. We could see a big bank under threat of investigation, hacking, ransomware, and data breaches. We could see a mining accident, like there could be a collapse or an issue with mineral, like in a mine, or an issue with minerals and mineral rights, and that includes like lead in food, things like that. High-profile person dies in an accident or suddenly, and that could be a politician, celebrity, or influencer. Big fire, it could be a warehouse, a military base, or something big. U.S. Israel expands war in Middle East or attempts to. Now, I wrote these back in February, guys, so here we go. Typhoons, cyclones, wind, fires of all kinds, big tornadoes possible, internet disruptions, issues with satellites, cables, and communications, big temperature changes causing power outages or communication problems, and we could see a political figure or CEO ousted or killed or have a health crisis. So that's what's up on deck. I think the most volatile day between the April 15th and 17th is the 17th. I think it is an extremely volatile day. Let's see. The 18th through the 20th, we could see erosion events, landslides, rock slides, sinkholes, significant damage to roads and neighborhoods. Remember, the transits are global. Doctors or medical professionals might be discussed or in the headlines. Big policy debates over fiscal matters, commercial real estate failures and defaults, global issues with rules, laws, and procedures. So there might be debates around the rule of law and when it comes to international activities, and that could be in trade, politics, and even rules of war. Potential legal actions towards public figures and bureaucrats, accidents, leaks with oil, gas, and chemicals. That could be a pipeline, that could be ships, etc. We see missile and rocket launches, telecommunications issues, cell towers, satellites, or internet cables sabotaged or broken by weather or storms. Issues with organ and blood donors or procedures. Let's see, biochemical weapons or could be used and or discovered. Missile launch goes wrong. Farmers and livestock in the news. Failed harvest planting season, delayed discussion of crop yield or issues with farmers, chemical weapons or chemical spills, big tides, waves, and or water damage, potential tsunami, massive flooding event, public figure in scandal, or accused of inappropriate behavior. And I think we're going to see some big seismic action, possibly on the 17th or the 18th. And I think it's highly increased in any active region, but as we saw earlier in the month, I believe we saw that in New York, that earthquake in New York. Any fault lines up on deck right now. It is very hard to pick directions. So there is that. And then we've got, let's see. I'm just looking at our dates. So we're going to look from the 18th to the 20th. That was it. On the 20th, we have the moon moving into Libra. It will be trine Pluto. That's when I think we could see issues on social media. I think we could see some big windstorms. And again, we're looking at like hurricanes and tornadoes. I think we could see some big anti-war protests. And I think Jack Smith is going to make a bold move, but I think that'll be in the beginning of that next week as we move towards the full moon. You can check out what's in the headlines and read the whole thing in the Awake Space Astrology magazine. If you're not a patron at the $15 level and up, you can get the magazine in the Patreon shop for $19.99. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. So it is going to be a little bit wild in the outer world. So how do you use this energy to your advantage? Because, again, with mundane events, world events, we don't have any agency. There's nothing really going on that we can fix with this. But when we're an individual, we can use that energy to our advantage. So I happen to have been born during a Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. In 1969, the day the men were coming back from the moon. So it was conjunct pretty much the 20th and 21st of July, at the exactness, as the perfection. And I was born on, actually, it might have been the 22nd too. That whole week, because it lasts a week, guys. I mean, as it approaches and then it separates, you get about a 2-week period. It's not just a one-day event. And likewise, when you have a major conjunction like that, that energy rings out over time. Think of like banging a gong, okay? And it's funny because I had people giving me other suggestions. No, I chose my metaphor on purpose, okay? I'm not here to debate you. I am going to tell you with 30 years of experience and having an 87% accuracy rating, and this is not to crow, but this is just to make my point. I'm really, really good at what I do. So when I give you a metaphor, it's on purpose. It's very specifically chosen to describe the energy at hand. So this is a large burst of energy, and the waves of energy move out over time. It is not just, oh, well, it happened that day. You have the things happening on the approach. You have the moment of perfection, and then you have the separation. And that energy will ring out until the next time. And I had a commenter rightly point out under one of my videos as I was trying to explain this. And you can have a planet cross that and activate what was going on. Now, what I find really interesting between the 1941 chart and today's chart is that the conjunction this time is at 21 degrees. And in 1941, that's where Venus was sitting. And that's why I don't think this is going to be global thermal nuclear war. I don't think we're going to see World War III exactly the way people are expecting it to be. I think it's going to be a little different. And I think it's going to focus on economics and trade in a different way. Okay. And we may see issues with food supply. I'm not going to say it's not going to get dirty and ugly. I just don't think it's going to be exactly what people expect. So it's not going to go the traditional route of what we think it might go. So we're going to see things change. So on an individual level, like I said, I was born with this in my chart. And so this aspect was always kind of like, people always ask me, what's your favorite thing? I'm like, I've always been really partial to my Jupiter-Uranus conjunction because it's wild card energy. And that is why you never know what I'm going to do, man. What's Laurie going to do? Nobody knows. And that's not the truth. I'm actually pretty methodical. But there's usually a historic event. You carry that energy within you. This is going to be a change to our financial systems. We're not getting rid of money. Don't get that excited. And yes, you're still going to have to pay your bills. But this energy is something to enervate you. You can get a lot of energy out of this. Grounding wise, it might be hard to stay grounded. Okay. So I wouldn't try to anchor yourself. I think that's going to cause a resistance pattern that will be really hard to work with. If I were you and in your physical shoes, I'd be open to inspiration and really listening to my intuition and really kind of not checking out and just being worried about all, what's happening on the latest soap opera or what's the latest TikTok drama. Or I'd be really looking at, what's up on deck for you and from your guidance. If I get asked one more time, is it a good time to look for a job? Hey, if you need a job, go look for a freaking job. Please don't cast an intellectual chart for that, astrology chart for that. Just go, start applying, do that. Mercury retrograde is a fine time to apply for jobs if you're unemployed. It's okay to go to interviews. It's okay to accept a new position, especially if you do not have a job. This is what we need to do. All right, we're looking at some patron shout-outs. You heard the music. You noticed I had no music for a couple episodes, and then the music came back, and that's because I had to change how I recorded the podcast, but I didn't like it without the music. So patrons had your special little French jazzy tune, just because, it's fun, and we need some fun. Even in a crazy world, we need some fun, especially so. So let's say a big welcome to the Awake Space's newest patrons. We have Mina, Bobby Joe, Carissa, Hannah, Diana, Hannah, Mary Kate, Michelle, Lori, Tina, Cecilia, Laura, Andrea, Meg, Courtney, Chris, Morgan, Karen, KG, Elizabeth, Ricky, Claire, Alexis, Jenny, Mia, Debbie, Christina, Jenny, Larissa, D, Laura, Carrick, Rudat, Nico, Alexa, S, Mochi, Nagrura, Christy, Robin, Caitlin, Jade, and Kirsten. Thank you for supporting the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I had a fun thing. I had a reading with a patron last week, and they thanked me for saying their name correctly, because you can tell I try to pronounce people's names correctly. If I don't get it right, let me know. Let me know in the Discord. Let me know in the Patreon chat. Let me know how to pronounce your name if I butchered it. I try really, really hard not to do that, but it was super cute. They're like, you got it right the first time. I'm like, that's awesome. Names are important. You need to be recognized for who you are, especially in this season of authenticity. Now, guys, patrons, your special discount for April. Now, I give discounts every single month to patrons for readings and classes, and you have a couple of these things up on deck. You've got your special discount on beginning astrology. You got a 50% off there. You've got your it's $150 off astro energy readings. Those are the 45-minute readings. And it's a consultation where I look at your timing. It's hard to describe these readings because I kind of work on a needs base, like what's up on deck for you? What are we looking at? It's not the same as the career, life path, small business reading where we're developing strategies, but I am looking at your timing. In the astro energies reading, we're looking at, is it a good time to move? What's up on deck? Where's the crunch going to be? Like, where is it going to be a little... You have to maybe take a little more deep breaths, and then when is it going to stop being crunchy? That's always nice. I love saying, when I see that a hard time in life has passed and it's never coming back, I will let you know. And I also will give you a warning if I see there's some extra crunch on the way, and I'll give you strategies of dealing with that and be like, hey, if this is coming up, you want to be aware. This is how you can deal with it and have a better outcome. If this is going on, then you need to consider these things, and I'll refer you out to whatever kind of professional service I think might help you. Whether it's going to be a little extra therapy, or you need an accountant, or you need to look at maybe getting your resume retooled. All of those things are up on deck when we have those astro energies readings. And patrons, you get $150 off. Now you can book out past April. Just because I give a discount every month doesn't mean you can't book this out into the future. I will be releasing my year ahead readings again in June. So if you've been waiting on that, you're going to have to wait till around the solstice. So the week of the solstice, I always release those. You also get 50% off the 2025 year ahead that happens on June 22nd. June 22nd. So, and the patrons, $15 and up, you save 50% on the live event with Matilda and me. We will be going through current affairs, looking at the hot stuff that's going on May and June and a little bit of July. It gets really, really bumpy, and we're going to help you navigate that together with humor and sass. Okay. There is some heavy stuff coming up. If you think it's hard on you guys, imagine being psychic, imagine being an astrologer and seeing this stuff way out in the distance and feeling the energy and understanding the magnitude of what's coming. And everybody, like, except you guys, doesn't listen. It can be really hard. So we found that humor is one of the best ways to kind of counteract that kind of heaviness. Because if people take themselves or the world too seriously, it's easy to drown in it. And we need to be functional so we can serve out in the world. So there's that. What else is up on deck? Yeah, that's all I got for you, patrons. Stay tuned because, intermediate is up on deck again, and you've got your special discount for intermediate astrology as well. And we just had such a good time. Right now we're working on the synthesis of charts and being able to synthesize the information in the latest round of intermediate astrology. And we did Winston Churchill. That was super fun. Really enjoyed that class yesterday. I was up really late because I'm still in Bahrain, right? So, but that was a good one. So that's exciting. I'm going to do one more round of healing the money wound, and we're going to start testing next month. So this month we're going to do one more round of the basic course. And then next month we're going to do beta testing on the coaching program. Patrons get a first stab at that and a 50% discount as well. So that's exciting. So that's coming your way. Sometimes it's 50%. Sometimes it's a little more. Sometimes it's a little less. It depends on your tier. But I love to give the patrons some love because without you, there's no podcast. There's no magazine. Speaking of magazines, I wrote some articles about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction because I wanted people to really understand what this energy is all about. I do think we're going to see some issues around food supply. I think we're going to see especially issues around beef, this Taurus, but beef, cattle, animal grain, food for animals, and then people food as well. I don't think we're going to see a slowdown on inflation when it comes to food. I've told you for years to grow as much as you can, use hydroponic systems if you can, grow stuff on a balcony if you can, or a windowsill. You can always grow a little mint. Mint's hard to kill. It can be done. I've done it, but it takes a lot to kill a mint plant. But you can grow a little something, or support people at farmers markets as much as possible. Go in on a CSA with roommates or friends. There's different ways to mitigate through these interesting times. And climate change is up on deck in 2024, 2025 in a really, really big way. And I don't know if you guys remember from 2023, 2022, people would be asking me about World War III, and I would say, it's not what you think it's going to be. It's going to be a little different than you expect, meaning it's not going to be like Mad Max and a post-apocalypse and, nuclear holocausts and all of that. What I see is climate change interrupting things, And when you look at it, it's still raining in Southern California. I had no clue until I talked to a friend in Southern California this morning. And it's about to rain in Bahrain. The last time I remember hearing about any kind of significant rain in mid-April in Bahrain was the year I came out after the Gulf War. And that was, environmental disaster city because of the fires in the oil fields, and it rained oil literally back in 1991. It was a thing, I tell you. It was a thing. So it's just really weird that we're here once again in an April after many years, and we've got a storm coming in. So, which it hasn't broken yet because the moon's still in Cancer. But once that ticks over to Leo, I think it'll be a little bit exciting. I think we might see some thunder and hail. When it rains here, it tends to be standing water because it's a desert. So this isn't going to be the only place that has weird weather. The whole world is seeing weird weather, especially as we move into the winter of 2024, 2025. So I think climate change is going to be a huge disruptive force to any kind of global conflict. I think global conflict will focus more on tech and trade. I think we will see violence, just like we've seen Russia and Ukraine, Israel to Gaza, and Israel bombing the embassy of Iran in Syria. It's very interesting to watch very old rules of international relations, of international law, be broken right now. And people going, no, this is the way it's always been. There's a lot of political gaslighting going on. And I say this as somebody who is very well studied in international relations, international law. I'm just like, what are people on? So when I watch State Department people retiring or quitting, I'm kind of like, that would have been me. I don't think I would have made it as long as they did. Just because, there's been a lot of shenanigans that I disapprove of over the years. That's why I went private sector in the first place. So I was like, nope, it's all evil empires. I might as well just go that way. So what can you do? I was talking a little bit about that before we went to patron shoutouts. What can you do with this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction? Well, it's very innovative energy, and you need to listen to your guidance. You need to not let your brain run amok. Now, we've seen a lot of spiritual psychosis up in the news. People are blaming various modalities. Spiritual psychosis can happen to people in, organized religions, spiritual pursuits, metaphysics. We've seen it, unfortunately, with somebody who was a so-called astrology influencer. I can speak. They weren't an astrologer. I went and I took a look at their work. They really weren't. They kind of were down the rabbit hole of QAnon conspiracy theories. And that's one of the reasons I went on to TikTok in 2020. If you thought I wanted to be a TikTok influencer, you would be wrong. I thought I'd get like 1,000 people maybe because I'm an old chick who knows shit, and I'd be able to go live and talk about astrology with people who really wanted to learn. I never went on to have, a mid-tier. A mid-tier is what they call it. I suppose if I like to sell widgets and things, I'd have more, but that's all right. I do not like to sell widgets and what's-its. I'm like, how do you think a nose ring is going to be simpatico with my message? Not that I'm against nose rings, but I do not wear them. So how is that going to work? But anywho, what can you do? You want to slow your mind down. You want to be deliberate in this energy. You don't want to go into guessing games and conjecture. So you know how it is if there's like a really public thing that happens and people become, you've heard of the court of public opinion, where everybody's convinced somebody's guilty or somebody's innocent without having seen all of the evidence. Stop it. Don't get involved in the drama online. Don't get involved in the latest scandals. There's going to be some pretty good scandals that come up this week. They're done to avert your eyes from global happenings. They're done to kind of disable you from taking action in your own life. Remember, all of that drama is oppressive in nature. So you want to keep your energy pretty much inside. You want to remember who's with you. Okay. You want to remember who's with you, who's giving you support. Okay. It's not really a time to kick off solo in the world. You want to work in small, tight groups, and you want to integrate together. It's really important to hold on to actual support and use your discernment. Discernment's a really important tool in our toolbox. And I think a lot of times as people are newly awakened or inexperienced in using their intuition or using their psychic abilities. And if you want to know more about how to find your own psychic abilities in your astrology chart, by the way, I do have an ebook called The Astro Guide to Instinct and Intuition. And that goes through the different clairs and how to identify them in your own birth chart. You can check that out in the Patreon shop. So there's a shop on Patreon. If you're a patron, you get it for free. Okay. If you're a patron, you get it for free. If you're not, it's not much. Okay. And it's worth having, and it'll teach you a lot. But one of the things people do is you kind of feel all powerful, right? You kind of think and your truth is the truth. And if different language gets used or there's a different set of perception gets used, that's why you see all the pissing contests on social media from usually inexperienced or underdeveloped people, with either in energy workers, healers, psychics, mediums, even astrologers. And once you actually are very solid in your own knowing, you don't have to get into it with people. You just don't. I mean, the only time I get mad is when I see people committing fraud, where they're absolutely not doing the do. So you don't want to be like, I know that person doesn't know. How can they have all those gifts and not know and not see? Well, we're all human. And B, we're not meant to work alone. We're meant to work in concert with one another. It's also important to recognize what is your work and what you have learned from others and give attribution. Okay. It's very, very important to understand what is yours and what is others, and to give, cite people. That's really important. It's important to, again, this season is all about authenticity up until the 19th. And then it's about sowing seeds for the future. And with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction being in Taurus, we're planting some very interesting seeds going forward. After the 1941 Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, there was actually an economic increase right around, 14 years later would have been 1955 would have been when the economy actually hit a very healthy space. So, about 14 years from now, we may be in another boom time because of how things are going to get deconstructed and reordered through this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. But times were kind of tough in a lot of countries between that 1941 and 1955 time period. And then from 55 to 65 was kind of this economic golden era, at least in the United States. Other countries were still recovering. And then, of course, we had the 1970s because they changed fiscal policy and they kept going to war. And wars are not good for the economy. The only war that was good for the economy was World War II, because in the United States, we had to build a fleet, So people often, they'll say things like it's true without qualifying all of the information. So for you, you want to be very agile and not stick to there's only one way to make money. There's only one way to get ahead in the world. You want to look at where you can share resources and tools, go in, have these on things with friends, things like that, the basics that you need. That's on a very practical level. On an energetical level, I'm going to say it again. I know I said it at the top of the show. You need to stop your brain from spinning out. You don't want to be going down rabbit holes. You want to be taking things step by step and slowly. You want to be making sure that you're moving with ease and grace. You want to make sure you're taking time to be deliberate so you can make the most out of sudden opportunities that show up. There's people saying this is going to be the luckiest time of the year. I disagree. I think it'll be an interesting time of year. I think there might be some golden opportunities to take advantage of. And at the same time, it could be very, very disruptive for people who aren't able or capable or understanding of how to take advantage of opportunity. So watch your consciousness. Don't just be reactive. That's not gonna help. So that's up on deck. What else? Oh my gosh, doing the do with Jupiter. Again, I'm concerned about the 17th. So I think that's the day we're going to see some big booms, and maybe kind of as we go along, you can see that in the magazine. Speaking of the magazine, let's see if I have it up. I do. I've had to record this in parts because Mercury retrograde has got me a couple times. So with internet connections, but let's see if I can find. Where's the? I am trying to find an article I wrote for the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. It's up. I rate these damn things. So, and that's right. That was the eclipses. All right. So I wrote a little thing about the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. And here it is. Expect the unexpected as Jupiter approaches Uranus to make the conjunction on April 20th, 21st, depending on where you are in the world. Approximately every 14 years, these two powerhouses meet in the sky to force an expansive change. And that is how the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction 2024 article starts in the Awake Space magazine. I want you to think about a forced expansive change. What would that mean like in your life? Like, what would it mean to have an expansive change in your life? Now, a lot of times people are afraid of the word change because they think it's a bad thing, but how could things change in a good way? And how could you meet that with the most amount of inspiration to get it out in the world? If you're a patron, I'm going to be going through this a little bit in a patron-only podcast this week. I'm also going to do a little seminar on the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. That'll help indeed. Like I said, I do still have reading spots. I am wanting to teach more because I enjoy teaching and I do enjoy readings, but I think I'm getting to a place in my career where, teaching is very fulfilling, and doing one-on-ones, I will still continue to do them. But you're going to have to, book those up. Not offering a ton of times on those, just because it does take a lot of energy. We have to guard our energy in these crazy times and look at what energizes us, what depletes us, what helps us keep going, what enthuses us, what inspires us. And if you work off inspiration, you're just going to roll with it. That's going to be great. So there is that. So let's see, that article, if you've got the magazine, that's the article on page 9. And I believe it's continued onto page 10. And then and 11. So this is what I want to read to you, the personal level, because the first two parts of that article are on the mundane level. But on a personal level, this Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, we're looking at it this way. So I'm just going to read from page 11 of the Awake Space Astrology magazine from the April issue. On a personal level, this is a time to really lean into radical self-acceptance. It's a show up and grow up kind of energy. You have to have faith in yourself, your capabilities. You can't marinate in discontent. You need to leap into your own future and take action to build a destiny of your own making. Instead of fearing the future, it's important to embrace your own unique talents and skills. Stop seeking improvement in areas that neither resonates nor feels satisfying, that only oppresses your inner light from shining. It's absolutely essential that you embrace change now because, comfortable or not, it's here to stay. We are living in a time of enduring change, and it's necessary to cultivate your inner resources, accentuate your natural talents and abilities, and lean hard into the curves that are coming. What you do now matters because a pathway is being laid that moves you forward into the next 14 years. It's not about big and grand gestures or taking quantum leaps. It's about opening yourself to grabbing hold of opportunities that show up. Don't decide you're not qualified if you're chosen for some role or task or job. Don't talk yourself out of doing something outside of your comfort zone because one time someone once was critical. Don't rest on tradition or lament on how things used to be. Bid that a fond farewell, I'm going to say that again. Bid that a fond farewell and understand a new adventure awaits. If a door slams shut, it will pop open another door. You may feel discomfort because all change is uncomfortable, even when it's for the best. Yet those who embrace the changes on the near horizon will be those that thrive in these uncertain times. The biggest lie you were told about life was that it was predictable. Life isn't predictable, and safety is an illusion. It's time to have faith and take constructive action. Okay, guys, other things I'm going to say that aren't going to help you is any kind of resentment. You want to clear resentment, any type of jealousy, any type of insecurity. It isn't going to help you. You need to be rock solid inside of yourself. And I don't want to hear yeah, but I don't want to hear it. Stop it. Okay. What I want to hear from you is, yes, ma'am, I am going to be kind to myself. Yes, ma'am, I am going to believe in myself and my abilities. I don't want to hear that, well, I'm not really good at anything. That's bullshit. You know what you're good at. You know what you like. You need to sit down and do some inventories on that this week. I want you to sit down and journal about it. Okay? Because for those of you who want to sit and say, I'm not good at anything, I'm not qualified, nobody likes me, everybody hates me, my family thinks I'm a loser, this is really bad, I'm never going to get anywhere. You are not going to have a good time through this energy. Okay? You have to lean into like, well, I'm pretty good at this. I can do a fair job at that. I'm capable. Okay. You want to know your capabilities. If you're in the mystery school, revisit those modules on assessing your skills and the things that enliven you. You have those exercises available to you. The work only works if you work it, right? The work only works if you work it. You cannot sit down and merely write affirmations. I'm not saying affirmations don't work. Obviously, I give them in the magazine, but you can't just give an affirmation, then sit on your hiney and expect things to happen. You do an affirmation, you allow your energy to be lifted, and then you do the next logical step. Aligned action is as important as clarity and understanding your own desire and needs. Then you follow it with intuitive action or, what do you call it? Sorry, aligned action. There we go. All right. It's really, really important, guys. The time for preparation is kind of over. I've been preparing people for many, many years in one way, shape, or form. And it's go time. It's go time. And it's funny, I was saying this in 2018, I had a group of students that were beta testing, actually, the mystery school curriculum. And I told them at the end of 2018, I said, guys, it's time. We have to start taking action. And I'm not going to sit around holding hands anymore. I need you guys to get moving on whatever it is you're doing because there's no more time to prepare. You have to start taking aligned action. And I'm going to have to go do my thing. We all have to be ready. It's coming. And what I meant was 2020. And I didn't know exactly what was going to happen in 2020, but I knew everything would change in 2020. And it did. And I'm beginning to feel that now. We don't have a lot more time to prepare. We need to just be taking aligned action. Aligned action does not always mean you know what the outcome is going to be. You just know that you need to do this next step. Oh, I need to call my friend. Oh, my friend is going to do this thing. They've invited me. I'm going to say yes. Okay. Now what? What's next? You see? You see? That's how it works. So there's that. That's some of how you're going to get through these times. I'd love to tell you life's a rose garden, but I'm afraid you don't get roses without thorns unless they're genetically modified and they don't smell very good. So if you want the nice smells, you're going to have to deal with a few prickles. And that's just life, my friends. People keep asking, when is the struggle going to end? There's always struggle in life. But you can make the best of it. Okay? And sometimes there is restoration. Okay? This trip in Bahrain, it's not a vacation. People keep saying, oh, have a great vacation. I'm not on vacation. I'm still working. And we're here for some very specific business. And so we've been working on these things for quite a long time. And yet I have been taking time with family because we haven't connected in 26 years except over the internet. There is restoration at hand. Restoration. So that's where we're at. Okay. And you can too. Don't count your losses, count your wins, especially this week. Again, I'm concerned about the 17th. I think there might be some kind of terrorist attack or some kind of bomb that could happen in one of the westernized countries in the world, or the United States, Canada, Mexico, as well as parts of Europe. And this would be Western Europe, particularly maybe the United Kingdom. But we could also see something happen in Germany. We could see things happen in more than one area of the world. And I think we could see some big seismic activity as well. All active regions, obviously, but we could also see it in places that we don't quite expect. I think we could see a sizable earthquake this week. And I think we could see the markets be exceptionally volatile. I think crypto will spike, but I think it could quickly fall. And I think that of the money markets and the exchanges too. So there's a lot going on, my friends, but you've got this. I believe in you. Yeah, there's a lot going on in the world. I'll be back in the States April 28th. I'm kind of excited about that. I will miss everybody, but I miss Malcolm, and Malcolm misses me. I was just talking to the person watching him, and he's starting to get very anxious, and now I'm kind of like, oh, I want to go home. So I will be back in the States on April 28th. And there's that. I'll be teaching. I got to look at my teaching schedule because I've got a class that starts on the 27th. I need to check the date. Oh, never mind. I think we're good. I'll check it out. If you're taking that class with me, if I have to reschedule it, you'll get an email and we'll just work it out. We'll get it done. Alrighty, you can see this and more. You can see all the discounts. You can see all of the articles I've been writing, including my jewelry that I got at the Gold Souk. I bought a lot of silver jewelry because it's pretty. And it's a really good price. Every time I walk near that little jewelry mall, it's a jewelry mall, okay? It's not little either. You can get exhausted looking at jewelry. It's exhausting, I tell you. I just walk in, I'm like, I'm in danger. But no, I got some beautiful silver. I love wearing silver. And yeah, it was fun. It was fun. I'll go back again before I leave. But anyway, I want you to take care of yourselves this week. Look out for your neighbors and your friends. Be cautious in public places over the weekend. And that would be malls, concert venues. Just be aware of your surroundings at all times. People people who are not in control of their own consciousness, whether they have mental health issues or they're just very reactive. Like, I argue that reactive people have mental health issues in general, not as a slur, but that it is even people who like maybe not are diagnosed with, but if somebody gets mad really easy or is all over the place emotionally, they could use some assistance in managing their consciousness. People who are already agitated may have more agitation. So just be aware there could be people who just kind of lose it over the weekend, around the 20th, but that could be like anywhere from the 17th into early May. So just because it's a week of things, a week of events. And if you're a patron, I'm going to go through the history that I was talking about in detail. I'm going to talk about that timeline that happened in May 1941. And I'm going to talk about how I see that kind of mirrored on the flip side here in 2024. And then we'll talk a little bit about how to navigate the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that will happen soon. So, oh my goodness. So you can join my Patreon as a free member. I write articles and I have information there and do occasional, once in a while I'll record this. And it's a spur of the moment thing. So it's like whoever's up, join me. You can show up as a guest. I did that for the Patron Q&A podcast this week. There's a ton of resources in the Patreon. You can check it out and see if it's something you're interested in. But if you like to stay up to date with what I'm doing and where I'm at, this is one of the ways you can reach out to us. I'm Laurie Rivers, and it is my pleasure serving you here at the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. And we'll talk to you next week.